Some time ago, I was teaching one of my students, and we came up to the concept of beginner's mind, which is an idea I like a lot and very much aim to apply on an everyday basis. So, beginner's mind, it's as far as I understand, is a word, is a concept from Zen Buddhism, which refers to having an attitude of openness, I'm reading eagerness and lack of preconception, and this is the important thing, lack of preconceptions when studying a subject, even when studying it at an advanced level. So if there's this idea that if I already know how to do it, there's nobody else is going to be able to teach me how to do it. So I'm not open to learning something because I think I already know it. And this is something that I'm sure everybody's come across many circumstances. There's another very nice quote by another Zen master, Zen teacher, in the book Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and he says that in the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, in the expert's mind there are few. And that would bring us to something else, another idea I have later, but basically there's this idea that if I have preconceptions, I cannot see. You know, there is this idea about perception and how we presume that we perceive in an objective and functional way, and then we know, because there are many studies about it, that our perception is very limited and is biased. We see the things we want to see, so there is this lack of freshness, and especially when we know something, when we have experience of something, which is why in a way children are more open to seeing things than adults, because adults already know. There's also this idea of you know, the change in the brain and in perception when we hit a developmental stage at the age of 7. But that's another issue. So I have a nice, what I think is a nice story about what is the, I think is the opposite of beginner's mind, and I think it's something that has really influenced our culture. So I have a couple of uncles, and they're wonderful, they're lovely. Both of them are kind of, you know, they're very good at practical things, and they know how to do things. Also, they're Italians, men, you know, and so that they just know, and what they know, and what they know, it's right. So we were once, there was a problem with a phone connection. So sometimes, you know, when you have different phones and you have to plug them, that you have to create a sort of circuit for all the phones to function, because sometimes the connection or the system in the house only supports a certain amount of phones. So you always have to kind of like change these things and negotiate between how many phones the system can support and how many are plugged in and so forth. Anyway, they were trying to get the phone to function, and we're talking about, you know, landlines, and sorry, I'm becoming so dyslexic. Dyspraxic even. So we're talking about landlines. So they were, you know, kind of like trying to get this phone to work, and I cannot quite remember what the problem was. But I went I tend to be quite what's the word, intuitive with sort of technical things. I don't know how, but usually I can make things work. And so I looked at it, and I plugged in a certain way, and their reaction was, once we realized that this was working, the reaction was, it should not be working. Which I think is a priceless reaction, and so common. So that there's the ideas, you know, the preconceived ideas of what should be working, what is right. It's so strong that when put in front of empiric evidence, in which the phone is working, they actually, instead of putting into discussion their preconceived idea, they're actually putting in discussion the fact that it should not be working. So there's something, it's not that their preconceived idea was wrong, there's obviously something wrong with the fact that it's working, because it should not. Draw your own considerations from this. But it's this idea that if what I think it's right, then even if something else is proven to be right, if it goes against my preconception, I'm not open to accept that. And of course it also means that when I'm trying to sort a problem, I will not be able to go outside the boundaries of my preconception, which is what they were doing, because they would not try different things, because they just thought this is how it should work. And I mean, it fits into the authority principle, and certainly fits into the identity, into the issue of identity, because, you know, if what I know, it validates my relationship with myself and my opinion of myself, not knowing something undermines my value and my worth, and therefore I'm not going to accept that I might be wrong about something. And this is a long discussion in its own terms. But to me, what was interesting is you know, that we find this so many times when people think they know something, and of course we know things, but it's this lack of openness towards contemplating the possibility that we might not have the whole picture, or that some of our information that we have might be wrong or imprecise, or that our interpretation of the information might not be accurate. And all these things come into play, and they prevent us, and prevent many people at all levels. We're talking about, you know, everyday life, politics, science, academia, anything, because it's the same principle applied to any kind of field. And this inability to be open to options, and to actually, you know, this need to validate our sense of worth and our inner authority by stating that we know something, and, you know, I know, you don't. That's that kind of thing. So that brings me back to the concept of experts, you know, which was mentioned by that lovely quote, that there are so many things, you know, that go into that. But of course, I think that, having an experience of academia myself, issues of power, authority, prestige, and worth are all connected to knowing something and being an authority on something, and having a superior knowledge about something than somebody else. So that's, again, you know, sometimes it's irrelevant, and sometimes it's a little game, but some other time can be quite influential in many ways, on a, you know, kind of public sphere, on a social sphere, on a cultural sphere. So I think it's quite negative. So, for example, this, you know, there was this idea that, oh, we don't need experts, and so that's a double edge. We need experts because somebody who has experience, as an expert is somebody who has experience of something. It's in front of somebody who doesn't have experience. But I find that the most interesting people to talk to about any subjects are the ones who know a lot about a subject, but they don't assume they know everything, or that they have every solution. I was reading recently a book by an Italian physicist, Carlo Rovelli. The book is called "Reality is Not What It Seems," and he was pointing out the how, you know, the fields of theoretical physics. People basically need to be open to all sort of, you know, options, and more importantly, they need to be open to the idea that they don't know, and so not knowing, as a, you know, balances the knowing. So we know some things, and there's things that we don't know, and of course that brings us back to, you know, the idea that I think it's a Socratic idea that about knowing that you don't know, and it's like having a vague ideas of all the things you don't know, and the beginner mind's attitude, it's not a status. So the thing is not like, you know, this idea that the beginner's mind is an empty box, and I'm sure I've seen this idea, this metaphor or simile used before, like, you know, that the pupil is an empty box in which you are going to fill with information. And I don't think, I never think of teaching something in terms of conveying information. It's more about helping in developing a strategy to learn something, whatever it is. And of course, it's easy when the box is empty, you know, because you can just put things in. And if the box is all full, then, you know, things are not, they won't get in unless you have a bigger box. So, you know, if you're very clever, you will have a bigger brain and we can put more information. Where effectively, the beginner's mind is just an attitude of approaching something afresh, so that you don't presume that anything experience, that anything that you are going to face is going to be, you know, responding to certain patterns or to certain ideas. And so it's also a sort of curiosity about what might happen, what might be there. And I think that allows us to find better solutions, to also see if you don't have to defend yourself, and that's will bring us to something else, to defend ourselves. Defend our self-worth, sense of worth, our authority, our prestige. If you're not you're not defending something, then you are open to acknowledging that you don't know something, you don't have the answer for everything, which I think is a very healthy attitude. We might have answers for certain things, or we might have temporary answers for something, but the beauty of the continuous learning experience, which is life, is exactly, you know, say, oh, look, this is not quite as how I thought it was. And of course, if we think that we already know how it is, there's no maneuvering space. So my thing about experts, if you're looking at a different way, I honestly think that in any committee of any kind, there's, you know, well, of course we want experts, but there should also be somebody who knows absolutely nothing about the subject, because well, A, they would have a beginner's mind, B, they don't have anything to defend, and if they're not scared of asking questions, they might come up with questions that might appear obvious to the people who are experts, but they are not, and so kind of like put a different perspective and also come up with fresh solutions, because, you know, there's many ways of approaching something, and sometimes when we are in certain strategy, we are not able to see them. So I think beginner's mind, you know, assuming that just we don't know anything, or that whatever we know is not the definitive answer, it probably is a very good strategy.